Have you ever experienced a woman who seemed interested, maybe even deeply connected with you, who suddenly started ignoring your texts, taking hours or days to respond, or just vanishing completely? You were sitting there wondering what happened, checking your phone every 5 minutes, trying to figure out if you said something wrong. What's even more confusing is when her friends tell you she actually talks about you all the time, or you notice her watching your social media stories within seconds of posting. Something doesn't add up, right? If she truly doesn't care, why is she keeping tabs on you? And if she does care, why the cold shoulder? This disconnect between her actions and her apparent feelings isn't random or crazy. It's actually deeply rooted in female psychology, and understanding it will completely transform how you handle these situations. The truth nobody's telling you is that women often ignore the men they care about the most. It sounds counterintuitive, even manipulative, but there's complex psychology behind this behavior that has nothing to do with playing games and everything to do with how women process attraction, vulnerability, and power in relationships. After coaching thousands of men through exactly this situation, I've identified the hidden patterns that explain why women pull away precisely when their feelings are growing stronger. And here's what's fascinating. Once you understand why this happens, you'll never be confused by mixed signals again. Let's start with the most fundamental reason women ignore men they actually care about: emotional self-protection. Women are biologically wired to be extremely cautious with their emotional investments. Throughout history, the stakes of choosing the wrong partner were catastrophically high for women. Pregnancy, societal judgment, and potential abandonment all created evolutionary pressure to proceed with extreme caution. This isn't conscious calculation. It's instinctual behavior embedded in female psychology. When a woman starts developing real feelings for you, alarm bells go off in her subconscious mind. What if you were not who she thinks you are? What if she gets hurt? What if she loses control? Think about it from her perspective. Alex from Chicago met a woman at a friend's wedding who seemed completely into him. They talked all night, exchanged numbers, and had amazing conversations for a week straight. Then suddenly, her texts became shorter, less frequent, and eventually, she just stopped initiating altogether. He was baffled, until he realized that the timing coincided exactly with when things started feeling more serious. The moment real emotions entered the picture, she pulled back to assess her feelings from a safe distance. This was rejection. It was her emotional immune system kicking in to protect her from potential pain. The second reason is even more counterintuitive but critically important to understand. Women use distance to test your strength and confidence. In the female psyche, a man worth investing in emotionally should demonstrate resilience, especially when things get challenging. By creating distance, she's unconsciously testing whether you'll become needy, desperate, or emotionally unstable when she pulls back. Will you start bombarding her with texts? Will you get angry or passive-aggressive? Or will you remain centered, confident, and unshaken? This isn't manipulation. It's a deeply ingrained evolutionary vetting mechanism to ensure she's connecting with someone who won't crumble under relationship pressures. I coached Brandon through exactly this situation last year. The woman he was dating would go days without responding, then suddenly reappear as if nothing happened. Instead of seeing this as random behavior, we recognized it as a subconscious test. When he stopped reacting emotionally to these disappearing acts and maintained his confidence and independence, her behavior completely changed. The testing stopped because he demonstrated the emotional strength she was unconsciously screening for. The third fascinating reason behind this behavior is that women often create distance when attraction becomes overwhelming. When a woman develops strong feelings, she can become overwhelmed by their intensity. Rather than sitting comfortably with mounting attraction, many women will paradoxically create space to regain emotional equilibrium. This is especially true for women who pride themselves on being independent or who have been hurt in past relationships. The stronger her feelings become, the more threatening those emotions feel to her sense of autonomy. Pulling away isn't about lack of interest. It's about regaining control over emotions that feel too powerful, too quickly. Ryan from Seattle experienced this firsthand with a coworker he'd been dating. Their connection was electric, and after several intense weeks together, she suddenly started canceling plans and seeming distant at work. He was ready to give up when her roommate accidentally revealed that she was completely obsessed with him, but freaking out about how fast it's all happening. The intensity of her feelings was actually causing her to create distance. the exact opposite of what seemed logical from his perspective. The fourth key reason women ignore men they care about stems from a deep-seated need to assess your level of interest independently from their own feelings. When a woman is developing genuine feelings for you, she needs to know that your interest is authentic and not simply a response to her obvious attraction. By pulling back, she creates space to see how you'll pursue without her active encouragement. Will you continue showing interest when she's not reciprocating? Or was your attention only present when things were easy? This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about creating the conditions to evaluate the authenticity of your interest. The fifth reason behind this perplexing female behavior goes deeper than most men ever realize. Many women unconsciously associate emotional challenge with value. This connection isn't random. It's deeply embedded in female psychology. Throughout history, women have been biologically programmed to seek men who represent valuable genetic partners, providers, and protectors. Men who were too easily acquired often signaled lower status or value. Modern women still carry this psychological programming, even when they are completely independent and successful. When a man is too available, too accommodating, or too easily won over, something in her subconscious questions his value. By creating distance, she's not only testing your response, she's actually creating the emotional challenge that her psyche associates with high-value partners. I worked with Jason, a corporate executive from Boston who could not understand why women would pursue him aggressively, then become distant once he showed reciprocal interest. His pattern was clear. The moment he became available and communicative, they would start ignoring texts or canceling plans. What Jason didn't realize was that his immediate availability was actually diminishing the perceived challenge, and consequently, his perceived value. When we restructured his approach to maintain healthy independence even when interested, the pattern completely reversed. The women who had been pulling away suddenly became consistently engaged. The psychology hadn't changed, only his understanding of how to work with it rather than against it. The sixth crucial element to understand is that women often use distance to resolve internal conflict about their feelings for you. When a woman is developing feelings but something doesn't quite align, perhaps her logical mind sees red flags her emotional side is ignoring, or maybe she's conflicted about whether you fit into her broader life goals. She'll often create space to sort through these contradictions. This isn't about playing games. It's about creating the mental and emotional clarity she needs to move forward authentically. During these periods, she may appear to be ignoring you while actually thinking about you constantly, weighing her feelings, and trying to resolve her internal conflicts. Tyler experienced this with a woman he'd been dating for several months. Their connection was incredible, but she suddenly became distant right when things were getting serious. After 2 weeks of minimal communication, she reached out to explain that she needed to work through her feelings about their different career goals and potential relocation issues. The distance wasn't about lack of interest. It was about creating space to resolve genuine conflicts between her feelings for him and her life considerations. By respecting this process rather than pushing for immediate resolution, Tyler actually strengthened their connection. The seventh reason women ignore men they care about involves the complex relationship between vulnerability and control. When a woman feels herself becoming vulnerable with you, sharing deep feelings, revealing authentic parts of herself, considering a serious future, she often experiences a simultaneous urge to reestablish control. This push-pull dynamic isn't manipulation. It's a natural psychological balancing mechanism. By temporarily withdrawing, she regains a sense of autonomy and control that helps her feel safe enough to be vulnerable again. This cycle of vulnerability and withdrawal will continue until sufficient trust has been established for her to feel secure in her vulnerability. David from Seattle described his girlfriend's pattern of opening up emotionally during intimate conversations, then becoming distant and unresponsive for days afterward. This confused and hurt him until he recognized the pattern for what it was: her psychological need to regain equilibrium after moments of deep vulnerability. Once he understood this cycle, he stopped taking these periods of distance personally, and instead saw them as part of her process of gradually building trust. The withdrawal periods became shorter and less frequent, as their emotional foundation strengthened. The eighth factor that drives women to ignore men they secretly care about is their need to distinguish between attraction and attachment. Women are biologically wired to be extremely careful about forming attachments, as historically these attachments carried significant consequences. When a woman feels strong attraction to you but isn't yet sure about longer-term compatibility, She may create distance to help separate physical and emotional chemistry from the more substantial question of whether you were right for her life. This isn't coldness, it's actually thoughtfulness and self-awareness. Kevin from Philadelphia was dating a woman who would be incredibly present and connected during their dates, but would then go days without communication. He later discovered through mutual friends that she was deeply attracted to him but concerned about their different approaches to money and lifestyle. Her distance wasn't about lack of interest. It was about her trying to see clearly beyond the chemistry to evaluate real-life compatibility. By understanding this dynamic and addressing the underlying compatibility questions directly, Kevin was able to transform their connection from intermittent to consistent. The ninth critical insight is that women often create distance when they are uncertain about their readiness for the relationship you represent. When a woman meets a man who embodies what she truly wants, but she doesn't feel prepared for that relationship, perhaps due to career goals, emotional healing from past relationships, or other life circumstances, she may paradoxically create distance from the very person she's most drawn to. This isn't a rejection. It's her attempting to align her timeline with her authentic desires. During these periods, she may appear to be ignoring you while actually processing significant feelings about the relationship's potential. Now that we understand the complex psychology behind why women ignore men they secretly care about, let's talk about how to respond effectively when you find yourself in this situation. The first strategy is counterintuitive but absolutely critical. Mirror her energy and investment level. When a woman pulls back or creates distance, your instinct is probably to pursue harder, send more texts, or try to recreate the connection you previously felt. This is exactly the wrong approach. By pursuing someone who's creating distance, you recommunicating that her withdrawal increases your interest, essentially rewarding the very behavior that's causing your frustration. Instead, practice matching her communication frequency and emotional investment. If she takes a day to respond, you take a day. If her messages are brief, yours should be similarly concise. This isn't about playing games. It's about respecting both yourself and the natural rhythm of attraction. I coached Matt from Chicago through this exact situation. The woman he was dating would regularly disappear for days, then return with enthusiastic messages expecting immediate responses. He was constantly available, responding within minutes whenever she reappeared. This created a pattern where she controlled the entire rhythm of their communication. When he began mirroring her timing and energy instead, something remarkable happened. Her communication became more consistent and predictable. By refusing to be more invested than she was, he actually increased her motivation to stay consistently connected. The second powerful strategy is to focus on maintaining positive, high-value non-reactivity. When a woman you care about seems to be ignoring you, your emotions naturally fluctuate between anxiety, frustration, and even anger. These reactions, while understandable, communicate emotional dependence rather than strength. The most attractive response is calm, positive, and non-reactive. This doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means demonstrating that your emotional state isn't controlled by her behavior. When she does reach out, respond warmly but not with desperate enthusiasm. Maintain the same positive, confident energy regardless of how long she's been distant. Connor experienced transformative results with this approach. When the woman he was dating began taking longer to respond to messages, he noticed himself becoming increasingly anxious and checking his phone constantly. Instead of letting this anxiety control his responses, he committed to maintaining consistent positive energy regardless of her behavior. When she eventually reached out after days of silence, he responded warmly but briefly, without any passive-aggressive comments about her absence. This non-reactive approach completely shifted their dynamic. She began initiating contact more frequently and explaining her availability in advance. The third essential strategy is to intensify your focus on personal growth during periods of distance. When a woman pulls back, use that energy and attention you normally direct toward her to invest in yourself instead. Double down on your fitness routine, pursue passionate interests, connect with friends, or advance professional goals. This serves multiple purposes. It prevents you from obsessing over her absence, creates authentic social media content that demonstrates your high-value life, which she's likely monitoring, and genuinely improves your life regardless of the relationship outcome. This is an ET about creating a false image to manipulate her interest. It's about channeling emotional energy productively rather than destructively. Jake from Atlanta turned a painful situation into a personal renaissance using this approach. When the woman he was deeply interested in began ignoring his messages, he redirected that energy into training for a half marathon, something he always wanted to do. Rather than spending weeks anxiously awaiting her response, he focused completely on his training program and nutrition. By the time she reached out again 3 weeks later, he had transformed physically and mentally, not for her, but for himself. Her response was immediate and clear. She was suddenly consistently engaged and interested in his new passion. The psychology is simple but powerful. People are attracted to those who demonstrate the ability to thrive independently. The fourth crucial strategy involves creating strategic, intentional space that amplifies her curiosity. When you notice a woman creating distance, don't just react, take it a step further by creating your own intentional space. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about genuinely refocusing on your life and priorities while giving her the psychological space to wonder about you. By occasionally being unavailable yourself, not responding immediately to every message, or taking weekends completely offline, you create natural curiosity. The human mind values what isn't readily available and tends to think more about what it can immediately access. This strategic space often accelerates a woman's decision-making process about her true feelings. Sean implemented this approach with remarkable results. After weeks of inconsistent communication with a woman he was dating, he decided to take a complete weekend offline for a camping trip with friends. He mentioned his plans casually but didn't make a big announcement about being unavailable. Those 2 days of complete silence created more forward momentum in their connection than the previous month of careful texting. When he returned, she initiated plans to meet in person and was noticeably more engaged. The space he created allowed her natural curiosity and interest to surface without pressure. The fifth powerful strategy is to focus on creating meaningful in-person interactions rather than digital connection. When a woman seems to be ignoring digital communication, shift your focus entirely to creating quality in-person experiences instead of trying to revive the texting pattern. Digital communication lacks the hormonal and neurochemical elements that strengthen attraction in person. A single quality dinner or activity together will do more to rebuild connection than weeks of text messages. When you do reach out, focus on setting specific plans rather than engaging in open-ended conversations that go nowhere. Austin from Nashville transformed a fading connection using this strategy. After weeks of diminishing text responses from a woman he was dating, he stopped trying to maintain their relationship through messages. Instead, he called her directly and suggested a specific activity for the following weekend. The quality of their in-person connection immediately reminded both of them why they were attracted in the first place. The chemistry and nonverbal communication that happened naturally in person completely reset their dynamic. By prioritizing real-world connection over digital convenience, he bypassed the patterns that were undermining their attraction. The sixth essential strategy is to master the art of strategic unpredictability. When a woman begins ignoring you, she's often unconsciously testing whether she can predict and therefore control your responses. If every time she pulls back, you respond with increased pursuit, she learns exactly what to expect from you. This predictability, while comfortable, actually diminishes attraction over time. By occasionally breaking patterns in your communication and behavior, sometimes responding quickly, sometimes taking longer, suggesting unexpected activities, or sharing surprising thoughts, you maintain an element of positive unpredictability that keeps her engaged and curious. Luke from Denver applied this principle with a woman who had been sending increasingly infrequent and brief messages. Instead of his usual careful, lengthy responses, he began varying his communication unpredictably. Sometimes he'd respond with thoughtful paragraphs, other times with brief but warm messages. Occasionally, he'd send something completely unexpected, a song that reminded him of a conversation they had, or a question about something they never discussed. This unpredictability completely disrupted the fading pattern they'd fallen into. Her engagement rapidly increased as she could no longer predict exactly how or when he would respond. This was an manipulation. It was breaking an unhealthy pattern that was diminishing their connection. The seventh transformative strategy involves recalibrating her perception of your availability. When a woman begins to take your attention and availability for granted, she has less motivation to engage consistently. By thoughtfully adjusting your availability, not artificially, but through genuine recommitment to other areas of your life, you create natural scarcity that increases your perceived value. This means occasionally being the one to end conversations first, having evenings where you are genuinely unavailable, or prioritizing other commitments alongside your interest in her. This isn't about creating jealousy or playing games. It's about maintaining a full, balanced life that doesn't revolve around her responses. Mason from Philadelphia saw immediate changes when he implemented this approach. The woman he was dating had fallen into a pattern of assuming he would always be available whenever she decided to respond or reach out. When he began authentically recommitting to his basketball league, volunteer work, and family obligations, his genuine unavailability at certain times completely shifted her approach to their communication. She began planning conversations in advance and maintaining more consistent contact, rather than assuming he would always be waiting. By recalibrating her perception of his availability, he transformed their entire communication dynamic. The eighth and perhaps most powerful strategy is to develop genuine emotional self-sufficiency. This goes beyond any tactical approach and represents a fundamental shift in how you relate to connection and validation. True emotional self-sufficiency means that while you genuinely value and desire connection with the woman you care about, your sense of worth, happiness, and fulfillment doesn't depend on her response patterns. This isn't about pretending not to care. It's about creating such a strong internal foundation that her behavior can destabilize your emotional state. This self-sufficiency is paradoxically the quality that makes consistent connection most likely. Noah from Seattle experienced this transformation firsthand. After months of emotional turmoil over inconsistent communication with a woman he was deeply interested in, he committed to building genuine emotional independence. He worked with a therapist, deepened his meditation practice, and built stronger connections with friends and family. This wasn't about the relationship. It was about creating a life that felt fulfilling regardless of any single connection. The remarkable result was that as his emotional need for her validation decreased, her consistent engagement dramatically increased. His genuine self-sufficiency created the safety and attraction that made her want to stay consistently connected. The final and most important principle to understand is that your response to being ignored will fundamentally shape the future of your connection with this woman. When you respond to distance with neediness, emotional volatility, or passive-aggressive behavior, you are establishing patterns that will persist throughout your relationship. Conversely, when you respond with confident self-respect, emotional stability, and genuine self-focus, you recreating the foundation for a healthy, balanced connection. The way you handle these early patterns will either empower or diminish you in all future interactions. Throughout this exploration of female psychology and strategic responses, the underlying message remains consistent. Understanding why women sometimes ignore men they care about isn't about manipulating their behavior or playing games. It's about recognizing the complex psychological mechanisms at work and responding in ways that honor both your worth and the natural development of authentic connection. By implementing these strategies, you are not trying to force a specific outcome. You are creating the conditions where genuine attraction can flourish naturally. The most powerful position you can adopt is one where you genuinely care about connecting with her, but remain completely comfortable with your worth regardless of her response. This paradoxical mindset, deeply interested but not desperately attached, creates the perfect psychological environment for attraction to develop and strengthen over time. By understanding the complex reasons behind her behavior and responding with confident self-respect rather than anxious pursuit, you transform not just this specific dynamic but your entire approach to connection. If this video opened your eyes to something you've been experiencing in your relationships, make sure to hit that like button so more guys can discover these insights. Drop a comment below sharing which of these patterns you've noticed in your own experiences. You might be surprised how many other men are going through exactly the same thing. And if you want more content that cuts through the confusion and gives you the real truth about female psychology, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. I am committed to bringing you the honest insights that most relationship advice completely misses. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.